I never imagined my baby shower would end with my sister-in-law trying to stab me. But that day changed everything. I've been married to my husband, Sam, for 7 years. We met at a friend's wedding back in 2016, one of those chance encounters that feel like fate. I was a bridesmaid, he was a groomsman, and we were paired to walk down the aisle together. From the moment we linked arms, there was a spark. By the end of the night, we had exchanged numbers, and a week later, we were on our first date. Our relationship moved fast, but in the best way. We had so much in common: a love for hiking, an obsession with true crime podcasts, and a shared dream of building a family. Just a year in, Sam proposed during a sunset hike on our favorite trail. 6 months later, we had the fall wedding of our dreams, surrounded by friends and family. From the very beginning, we knew we wanted kids, so we started trying right after our honeymoon. At first, it was exciting. We joked about which traits our baby would inherit: my curly hair or Sam's dimples. But as months passed with no positive test, excitement turned into anxiety. We tried everything: tracking ovulation, eating healthier, even joining a gym together. Sam quit smoking. I gave up coffee. Still, nothing. After 2 years of disappointment, we saw a fertility specialist. Weeks of tests led to frustratingly inconclusive results, no clear reason why we couldn't conceive. The doctor told us to keep trying, that sometimes these things just take time. But it didn't feel that simple. The more time passed, the more isolated we felt. Meanwhile, life moved forward for everyone else. Sam's younger sister, Rachel, married her college sweetheart, Jack. At their wedding, Rachel caught the bouquet and joked about being next to have a baby. It was just a silly moment, but I remember feeling a pang of envy. Social media became unbearable: constant pregnancy announcements, baby photos, gender reveals. We started avoiding baby showers, birthday parties, anything that reminded us of what we couldn't have. It felt like the world was moving on, leaving us behind. Then, after 5 long years, it finally happened. I was a week late, but too scared to test. I had seen too many negative results. Sam, ever the optimist, bought a test and urged me to take it. When those 2 pink lines appeared, we both burst into tears. We took 5 more tests just to be sure. We kept it a secret until the 12-week mark, nervous something might go wrong. But at our first ultrasound, when we saw our tiny baby bouncing on the screen, we knew it was time to share our joy. We announced the pregnancy at a family barbecue. The reaction was overwhelming: tears, cheers, hugs. It was everything I had dreamed of. But as I looked around, I noticed Rachel sitting stiffly, her expression unreadable. When she finally came to congratulate us, her hug felt forced, her smile tight. I brushed it off. Maybe she was just surprised. As my pregnancy progressed, Rachel's behavior became odd. She rarely asked about the baby, and when she did, her comments were laced with negativity. When I showed off a beautiful hand-knitted blanket from my grandmother, she muttered, "Shame to put so much work into something that'll just get spit up on." Despite this, we kept trying to include her. She and Jack came to our gender reveal party, where we found out we were having a girl. Rachel arrived late, barely spoke, and left early, claiming a headache. Then came the baby shower. Sam's mom offered to throw it for us, and we were beyond grateful. Our house was filled with friends, family, and love. Rachel showed up an hour late, looking annoyed. She shoved a gift into my hands without a word and went straight to the food table. The whole time, she made snide remarks about the decorations, the games, even the gifts. Then, as I unwrapped presents, Rachel's expression darkened. When I opened her gift, a plain white one, she suddenly stood up and shouted, "This is so unfair." The room fell silent. She ranted about how she had been trying to get pregnant for years, how she deserved this more than I did, how life was cruel and unfair. Then, before anyone could react, she grabbed the cake knife and lunged at me. Sam's reflexes saved us. He caught her wrist before she could reach me, but the chaos that followed was a blur. Someone called the police. Rachel was arrested for attempted assault. The baby shower ended in shock and horror. I sat there shaking, trying to process what had just happened. The sister-in-law I once considered a friend had tried to hurt me and my unborn child. Sam was devastated, torn between comforting me and reeling from what his sister had done. Later that night, Jack called us, begging us not to press charges. He revealed that Rachel had been struggling with infertility and depression, that she wasn't in her right mind. But how could we just let this go? We made our decision. We were pressing charges. It wasn't an easy choice, but it was the only one that made sense. Rachel had attacked me while I was pregnant. We couldn't just brush that aside, no matter the circumstances. The fallout was immediate. Our family was torn down the middle. Some relatives thought we were being too harsh, that Rachel's actions were the result of emotional distress and should be forgiven for the sake of family unity. Others firmly supported our decision, insisting that what she did was inexcusable no matter her mental state. I couldn't help but wrestle with guilt. Had I pushed Rachel too far by celebrating my pregnancy when I knew she was struggling? Should I have been more sensitive? But then I remembered the fear I felt when she lunged at me, the way her eyes darkened with rage. I placed a protective hand over my growing belly and reminded myself she could have hurt my baby. A month passed. Rachel remained in jail, awaiting trial. Then, out of the blue, Jack reached out to Sam, asking if we could meet. He said it was urgent. After some hesitation, we agreed to meet at a local coffee shop, a neutral space. But when we arrived, it wasn't just Jack waiting for us. Sam's parents were there too. Rachel's mother, Linda, was the first to speak. She was in tears before she even got a word out. "Please," she begged, "please drop the charges." She told us Rachel had been diagnosed with severe depression and anxiety. She was now on medication and in therapy. "She's sick," Linda said. "Jail isn't where she belongs. She needs help." I listened, but all I could think about was the look in Rachel's eyes that day. How she went from quiet to enraged in seconds. How it could have ended differently, so much worse. Then, Jack dropped a bombshell. Rachel was pregnant. Apparently, they had been undergoing IVF, and their last attempt had worked. She had found out just days before my baby shower. But instead of celebrating, she had spiraled. The combination of hormones, depression, and her long battle with infertility had pushed her over the edge. I sat there, stunned. A part of me felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. I knew the pain of waiting, of hoping, of feeling like life was passing you by. But another part of me remained wary. Her pregnancy didn't erase what she had done. Sam and I stepped away to discuss. We walked to a nearby park, the same one where we used to have picnic dates in the early days of our relationship. It felt surreal, standing there debating the fate of someone who had once been part of our inner circle. We were torn. We understood that Rachel was in a dark place and needed help. But we couldn't ignore what she had done, how she had put me and our unborn child in danger. After a long, emotional conversation, we reached a decision. We would talk to our lawyer about a plea deal. We weren't comfortable dropping the charges entirely, but we were open to an alternative that ensured Rachel got help, mandatory therapy, community service, probation. Something that would hold her accountable without putting her behind bars. When we returned to the coffee shop and shared our thoughts, Jack and Linda exhaled in relief. Linda hugged me tightly, tears streaking her face. "Thank you," she whispered. It was the first time I'd seen her look at me with anything but worry since that awful day. But before anything could move forward, we got a call. Rachel had been hospitalized. Jack's voice was thick with emotion as he explained. Rachel had started bleeding. She was at risk of losing the baby. The stress of the impending trial, combined with her fragile mental health, had taken a toll on her body. I felt a wave of conflicting emotions. Despite everything, I wouldn't wish the pain of losing a pregnancy on anyone. Not even Rachel. The trial was postponed due to her condition. And now we were left with a heavier question. Were we doing the right thing? Were we being too harsh? Not harsh enough? Sam and I buried ourselves in preparations for our own baby's arrival, trying to focus on what truly mattered, our daughter. We started attending parenting classes. Every lesson reminded us of the responsibility we were about to take on. And it reinforced one thing: we needed to create a safe, stable environment for our child. But just when we thought we had time to process everything, life threw another curveball. Because weeks later, as I was recovering in the hospital after giving birth to our baby girl, Sam walked into the room, his face pale. And when he opened his mouth, the words sent a chill through me. Rachel lost the baby. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I was cradling my newborn daughter, Lily, barely a day old, yet the weight of that news pressed down on me like a tidal wave. I stared at Sam, searching his face, hoping I had misheard him. But his expression told me everything. Rachel had miscarried at 16 weeks. A part of me, despite everything, felt an ache of sympathy. I knew what that loss meant to her, how desperately she had wanted this child. No matter what had happened between us, I wouldn't wish that pain on anyone. The news shattered what was left of her. Rachel's mental health declined rapidly. She was placed under psychiatric care, where doctors determined she needed long-term, intensive treatment. Given the circumstances, our lawyer advised us to reconsider pressing charges. At this point, she said, pursuing legal action won't serve anyone. Rachel isn't a threat right now, she's broken. Sam and I spent days debating what to do. On one hand, what Rachel did at my baby shower was terrifying. If Sam hadn't stopped her, I don't know what could have happened to me or Lily. I still had nightmares about that moment, the way her face twisted in rage, the glint of the knife in her hand. But now, she wasn't the same person. She had lost everything: her freedom, her mental stability, her baby. She wasn't in jail, but she was in a prison of her own mind. In the end, we made the hardest decision yet. We withdrew the charges. I won't pretend it was easy. A part of me still feels conflicted about it. But we set strict conditions. Rachel had to continue her therapy, and under no circumstances would she be allowed near Lily unsupervised. If she ever stopped treatment or showed signs of instability again, we wouldn't hesitate to take action. When we broke the news to Jack and Sam's parents, their reactions were mixed. Linda burst into tears and hugged us, whispering, "You don't know how much this means to our family." My own parents, however, were furious. My father pulled me aside and said in a firm voice, "She tried to hurt you. And now you're just letting it go? What if she snaps again?" I had no answer. I didn't know if I was making the right choice. All I could do was trust my instincts. The months that followed were tense but quiet. Rachel remained in psychiatric care, and Jack kept us updated on her progress. She was still fragile, still recovering, but her doctors said she was showing signs of improvement. Meanwhile, Sam and I focused on our daughter. Lily was growing fast, her tiny hands reaching for everything. Her laugh the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. Every time I looked at her, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was my priority. No matter what happened with Rachel, nothing would ever change that. Then, 3 months after Rachel's release from the facility, we got a message from Jack. Rachel wanted to meet Lily. The request sent a chill down my spine. I had spent months trying to move past the fear Rachel had instilled in me, but this was something I wasn't sure I could do. Sam and I talked about it for days. He was hesitant, but more open to the idea than I was. "She's been in therapy. She's making progress," he reasoned. "Maybe this is part of her healing and ours." I wasn't convinced. I still saw flashes of that day, the knife in her hand, the way she lunged at me. Could I really trust that she had changed? We sought advice from our therapist, who helped us work through our fears. In the end, we decided to allow a short, supervised visit on our terms. Jack, Sam's parents, and Sam himself would all be present. The meeting would take place at Sam's parents' house, neutral territory, where I could leave if I ever felt uncomfortable. The day of the visit, my stomach was in knots. When we arrived, Rachel was already there, sitting stiffly on the couch, wringing her hands. As soon as we walked in, she looked up, her eyes immediately landing on Lily, who was cradled in my arms. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, in a shaky voice, Rachel said, "Thank you for letting me be here." She didn't ask to hold Lily right away. Instead, she simply watched her, a mix of sorrow and longing on her face. After a while, she finally whispered, "Can I?" My grip instinctively tightened, but I forced myself to breathe. I glanced at Sam, who gave me a reassuring nod. Slowly, I stepped forward and, keeping my hands beneath Lily, I let Rachel hold her. She cradled my daughter like she was something fragile, something precious. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't say anything at first. Then, in a broken whisper, she said, "I'm so sorry." She apologized not just for that day, but for everything. For the cruel remarks, for shutting me out, for the rage she had let consume her. She didn't try to excuse herself. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She simply took responsibility. And for the first time since the attack, I saw something in her I hadn't seen in a long time: remorse. That didn't mean everything was fixed. I still felt uneasy around her. I still struggled to separate the Rachel I had known from the Rachel who had tried to hurt me. But in that moment, I knew one thing: she was trying. Since that visit, we've taken small steps toward rebuilding. Rachel sees Lily once a month, always supervised, always on our terms. Each visit gets a little easier, but I'm still careful, still watchful. My parents remain wary, my mother never taking her eyes off Rachel whenever she's near Lily. I don't blame her. I still have my own fears. But I'm learning that healing isn't about erasing the past, it's about moving forward in a way that feels safe. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust Rachel again. I don't know if our relationship will ever be what it was. But for now, I'm allowing space for what could be. And as I hold my daughter each night, tucking her into bed, I remind myself of what truly matters: Lily is safe. She is loved. And I will never let anything change that.